2:47 p.m. A Ukrainian Mi-24 attack helicopter flies low and slow, looking like easy prey. But this flight was no mistake. When the Russian team fires an IGLA missile, the helicopter answers with a barrage of 80 rockets and flares, confusing the system. The Russian error lasts only seconds, but it is fatal. Their position is exposed, and a kamikaze FPV drone is already on its way. To understand why the Russians fell into this trap, we need to take a closer look at the bait itself. The legendary Mi-24 Hind, known as the Flying Tank. The Mi-24 is one of the most iconic attack helicopters in the world. Armored like a combat vehicle and still capable of transporting troops, it was designed to withstand heavy impacts and return fire with even greater intensity. It is a rugged attack platform built to operate in extreme scenarios. Mounted under its wings were 4 B-8V pods. Each carried 20 S-8Com rockets of 80 millimeters, a total of 80 projectiles ready to fire. Each rocket weighs 11.7 kilograms and carries a 1.1 kilogram warhead designed to penetrate up to 400 millimeters of armor. A single helicopter carried enough ammunition to turn armored vehicles into scrap. For a sector considered calm, this arsenal was disproportionate. The location chosen for the operation was Oleski, an area that for months had seen only drone flyovers and sporadic artillery fire. Nothing that would justify the presence of such a valuable asset. To any experienced analyst, it made no tactical sense. But to the Russians on the ground, it looked like the perfect opportunity. A large, slow target, heavily armed, flying alone in an unlikely place. What they did not realize was that every move had been carefully planned. The Mi-24 was not there by accident. It was the bait meant to draw eyes, sensors, and, inevitably, the shot that would reveal the enemy's position. 3.2 kilometers away, a group of Russian soldiers watched the sky through binoculars. For them, it was the perfect chance to take down one of the most feared symbols of Ukraine's arsenal. At that moment, the choice of weapon was obvious: the 9K-38 IGLA, Russia's primary man-portable air defense system. The IGLA is compact, weighing 17.9 kilograms, and fires the M939 missile 1.5 meters long, with a warhead of 1.17 kilograms, 390 grams of it being pure high-explosive power, more than enough to turn the Mi-24 into wreckage and flames. The secret to the IGLA's lethality is not just in its warhead, but in its guidance technology. The missile uses an infrared seeker cooled with liquid nitrogen, allowing it to distinguish the concentrated heat of an aircraft engine from other heat sources in the environment, including the most common countermeasures like flares. For the Russians, the equation seems simple: an exposed target and the ideal weapon to bring it down. But what they ignored by pulling the trigger of the IGLA, they were not just trying to eliminate a helicopter. They were unknowingly lighting a beacon that gave away their own position. The Ukrainian response began immediately. The Mi-24 dove and unleashed everything it had. All 80 S-8Com rockets were fired in sequence, turning the sky and ground into a spectacle of explosions. But accuracy was not the goal. The pilot was not trying to destroy armored vehicles or specific positions at that moment. What he was creating was something far smarter. The rockets struck across different points. Many exploded in empty fields. Others hit the surface of the water, throwing up columns of steam and glowing fragments. Each impact added a new heat source to the environment, building a chaotic confusion for enemy sensors. It was in this setting that the Russians fired their IGLA missile. At the instant same time, the Mi-24's SP-015 Berza radar warning receiver detected the threat. The pilot reacted immediately. He pulled the helicopter into an evasive maneuver and activated the UV-26 system. Within seconds, 12 flares were released, forming a trail of blazing fireballs burning at over 2,000 degrees Celsius. Now the IGLA seeker faced an impossible dilemma. The infrared sensor, so praised for its sensitivity, was being forced to choose among dozens of different targets. The intense heat of the helicopter's engine, the superheated flares in the air, and the multiple thermal signatures on the ground created by the rocket impacts. The result was inevitable. The missile lost its lock. Instead of tracking the Mi-24, it was lured toward one of the false heat sources, veering off its lethal path and exploding in vain. For the Russian soldiers on the ground, the scene looked absurd. The precise shot from their most trusted weapon had been completely neutralized right before their eyes. But for the Ukrainians, everything was unfolding exactly as planned. While the missile was lost in the field, something far more important was happening. The IGLA launch had not only failed to bring down the helicopter, it had exposed the Russian position. The heat plume left behind by the shot was massive and unmistakable. What followed was the activation of a true, real-time kill chain. In fractions of a second, triangulation confirmed the coordinates. This data was transmitted without delay to nearby strike units, creating a direct line between the Russian mistake and the Ukrainian response. Retaliation would not come from another helicopter or a heavy artillery battery, but from something much simpler and far more relentless: a kamikaze FPV drone. Equipped with an RPG warhead, it becomes a lethal precision weapon. This FPV is cheap, almost disposable compared to its impact. Stealthy because it is small and electric, which makes it silent and hard to detect. And above all, it is controlled in first-person view as if the operator were inside the drone itself. That immersion gives the remote pilot surgical precision to hunt the target until the final strike. The launch was immediate. The drone advanced on a low trajectory, flying about 50 meters above the ground. At that altitude, it stayed invisible to radar and nearly imperceptible to enemy eyes. The final hunt was already underway, and the Russians had no idea. 8 minutes had passed since the IGLA was fired. For them, that meant safety. Old doctrine taught that after a few minutes, the position was no longer in danger. Following that logic, they packed up their equipment, preparing to move. But in modern warfare, 8 minutes is an eternity. The FPV drone kept advancing in silence. Through the operator's goggles, the view was clear. The Russian team distracted, confident they had gotten away. In the final seconds, the altitude dropped even lower and the dive began. The camera transmitted one last image. The strike neutralized both the manpads and its crew in a single blow, ending the trap exactly as planned. More than just a tactical victory, it was proof of a new doctrine of war. Ukraine was using high-value assets like the Mi-24 not only to attack, but as bait to wipe out enemy air defenses. It's a high-risk move, but one with massive rewards. Every time a Russian team fires, they run the risk of being hunted down immediately. The psychological effect is devastating. From now on, every Russian air defense operator knows that pulling the trigger could mean attracting a kamikaze drone within seconds. That uncertainty breeds hesitation, and that hesitation gives Ukrainian pilots the freedom to operate with greater boldness and safety. It's a strategy that overturns traditional tactics and showcases Ukraine's adaptability. Intelligence, speed, and technological integration are redefining the battlefield. What was once a simple exchange of fire has now become a lethal game of bait and instant retaliation. In the end, the deadly maneuver proved a crucial point. The hunted can become the hunter. A boldness that shows how in modern war, intelligence and speed can be deadlier than the weapon itself. This attack shows how Ukraine has been turning every ambush into an opportunity. But what happened in Crimea was even bigger. An offensive that left Russian bases in ruins and exposed Moscow's critical vulnerabilities to the world. Click on the screen right now and see how this strike changed the entire course of the war.